O King, my King, in the last 200 years, and especially the last 50 years, impurity has gone up as a vice, and purity has gone down as a virtue. Even several shepherds are struggling with expressing church doctrine on the matter. It may be due to their formation. And many sheep believe there are exceptions to the rule, seeing rules as serving a purpose and wanting to serve that purpose instead of following the rules as though they are smarter than the rules. But in your kingdom, my King, virtue and vice should be the essence of the law, and the virtue of purity will be among the hardest to enforce. But I'll tell you why it's important and how it's broken down our civilization. That is how neglecting it has done this. 1. Purity is among the highest of virtues, the highest being humility. Generally speaking, when someone accepts something even slightly toxic, that toxicity builds. It builds upon itself. Corruption tends to feed upon corruption, which is to say, the more toxic something becomes, the more that intoxicated thing craves toxicity. You know, the first taste is free. 2. Procreation is inevitable in our societies, but we make a distinction between noble and wild behavior. Noble behavior is what serves God. Wild behavior is what serves the self, which is the devil's cause. 3. The most noble practice of chastity is to only, underlined, only procreate when children are desired by the husband or the wife, and the children are able to be had. It is done within the confines of two people who only ever know one another and no one else, which creates a maximal bond between the two without any hint of toxicity. 4. Nature is an ally of God because God created nature and created humanity as its stewards. As stewards, we must practice full control over nature and use this order to give glory to our Creator, to express our belonging to Him. And in our time, we keep our lives clean but dirty up the soul. 5. Time, like nature, is an ally. When we say, grow a plant, we do not drown it in rain before it is sprouted. We do not parch it, but it needs the right balance of sun, rain, and nutrients or fertilization in the soil, and time must be allowed to process these things. 6. Affect is naturally aroused by nature, and mankind has it in order to build strong bonds. Sentiment determines the strength of our bonds, and we use sentiment as a tool to aid order. Meaning, don't get sentimental towards blankets or teddy bears or pets when you need to use this affect towards building your bond with God. 7. As you know, my King, the devil wants to corrupt all of these principles so that humanity is led into ruin, so that he might actually win his argument with God and say, oh, well, everything you create is nonsense and it only wants to serve the self, just like I did. 8. The concept of male and female is akin to the concept of spirit and flesh. The spirit dwells in a higher state, seeks communion with God. The flesh dwells in a lower state and seeks comfort in the self. They would have been allies, but thanks to the fall of man, they create opposing force and must do so for complementary reasons. So the Lord says of man, that because he obeyed woman, not him, the earth in his labors will be cause for sorrows. And he says to woman that man shall have dominion over her. Likewise, the spirit is distracted by matters of the flesh, and matters of the flesh are governed by matters of the spirit and frustrated by this higher sphere. So whenever a woman goes man or a man goes woman, think of them as saying spirit or flesh. 9. The devil corrupts man with unbridled lusts, which is one of these sorrows. Adam once looked upon woman and called her flesh of his flesh and bone of his bones, and because his beauty can be captivating. The devil shall tempt beautiful women, we have many in our times, to become like gorgons. That is, those creatures that that petrify others. And these gorgons drive a man towards a wilder nature and away from his nobler nature. And these gorgons will do so with her charms and her beauty. The traditional gorgon is called Medusa. These gorgons are no better than witches and will invite trouble in your societies. 10. The ancient serpent corrupts the natural process of time by wanting to drown the budding plant, parch it unnecessarily, just like Adam and woman were corrupted to eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, though they were forbidden to do so. He will want hormonal boys and girls to spend time around one another before either are ready for marriage. The more messy, the more better for Satan. On that note, 11, a man should only be ready for marriage when he is working a trade and he has established enough funds to provide for others. A woman should only be ready for marriage when she is able to independently steward a household and see that the man's needs and the future children's needs are cared for without neglect. She becomes an asset to the household. 12. The devil will introduce novelties that will cause men and women to molest one another, and as the result of the molestation, emotions will be awoken and aroused that were best left asleep for the right time and maturation. This is like drowning the budding plant, okay? Not only will it awaken emotions, it will intoxicate their desires, and they will yearn for things not found in the marital bond, i.e., introducing new toxicities. 13. Among these corruptions are polygamy, mirrored affect, incest, or other corrupted activities. And those who were victims and who have an unforgiving nature because they wish to pass down their sin and not end it, will look to spread that corruption because they were victims and they are angry at God for having allowed these things to happen to them. A lot of these corruptions were listed in the later chapters of the book of Leviticus, the third book of the Old Testament. 14. Polygamy becomes more attractive to people who've reacted to affect from hormonal influence when they were too young and exposed too early. Boys and girls being put into coeducation is a disaster, a social civic disaster. They encourage children to explore, not knowing they're doing irreparable damage to them biologically, creating unnecessary affect, leading to wild behavior. 15. Mirrored affect, that is one who bonds with the same sex, is something impressed not only upon molestation, but the self can cause that molestation, and so can demons if they sense weakness by building sentiment upon this sin with dreams and with random thoughts, which will lead to obsession, typical of the path of demonic of infliction or affliction. 16. Incest causes a breaking of boundaries, leading to disordered desires which lead to nothing but wild results. Although nature naturally tells us these boundaries, the human being can become severed from its nature, and that knowledge no longer acts as intrinsic. That is, we no longer see these things as abominations when we're experiencing them. But even demons understand abomination. That's why they're able to express it. You can't be artful if you don't know your art. But some corrupted men and women lose this sense, so they don't know they're doing abominable things. 17. Some contest that marriage gives two the right to engage in all forms of intimacy to strengthen the bond with one another as its main cause. But this is not true. Engaging too much in this behavior creates obsessions and addictions, which are both conduits to demonic activity and unbridled lust, just like mirrored affect. Just like food, intimacy of this sort requires regulation. Desires are best put to sleep unless the process is fruitful towards procreation. 18. Men who practice animal husbandry carefully breed their animals so that their animals serve a purpose. As a king, you are like a farmer who must also ensure that your people raise children in a rightly ordered environment and that accidents, whoopsies, don't happen. 19. Sins like mass fetal genocide are simply a symptom of the devil having corrupted our societies with polygamy and unbridled lust. Men want to shut down fetal genocide, but neglect to handle the root of the cause, which is the sins of fornication. These things have to go away before mass fetal genocide go away. You can fix the symptoms and not address the root, just like people take pills to manage or treat a problem but not cure it. We need to cure this problem by banning fornication. 20. I liken our young girls to being powerful magnets, and in order that we protect powerful magnets from picking up a bunch of scrap and junk, we keep them far away and well protected. A good father will ensure that she is kept distant from boys when the hormonal period begins. A good father will ensure that she is trained to act with propriety and a powerful sense of dignity. 21. We consider things beautiful when they are rightly ordered, possess symmetry, and serve the purpose not only with utility, but also with style. A virtuous and pure woman adorns a man and his house, and inspires him to go beyond himself to accomplish more than he ever would have, being by himself. And in this bond, 1 and 1 can make 3, it can make 4, and it can make 100. 22. I must tell you, O King, about the crucible phase, that men and women should have a period in which, after they agree to marry, that they should spend time with one another to help motivate one another and mold to one another without creating a more permanent attachment with the act of procreation. This is the time between their agreeing to marry and the time of procreation. This is solely because it's an excellent corrective motivation. When the marriage occurs and the bond is made permanent, it can cause two people to lose their motivations, and they will do this before they are formed to one another and will cause marital problems that are perpetual. Since all men and women will come with varying backgrounds. Encourage this crucible phase to take place in our societies, that when the metals are hot, they bond to one another before growing cold, where they're then unable to bond to one another. 23. Marriage is a privilege to be earned. We become married for noble reasons. That men and women motivate one another to become closer to their Creator. If your kingdom is well regulated here, O King, that beauty will shine the whole world over. And so the exemplars of that matrimonial bond are Joseph and Mary.